Eyemouth Past, Present and Future. In maps, photographs and video. Eyemouth is a historic Scottish fishing port in the Scottish borders, just 5.7 miles from the English border. First documented in the 12th century, it is defined by a turbulent history of international conflict, illicit smuggling and tragic fishing disasters, as well as its rich maritime heritage. The 1881 Black Friday disaster. The sea has always been central to Eyemouth, but it brought catastrophic tragedy on October 14, 1881. A sudden hurricane struck while the local fishing fleet was at sea, destroying numerous boats. A staggering 189 fishermen perished, 129 of whom were from Eyemouth alone, leaving behind 73 widows and over 250 fatherless children. This tragedy forced the planning for vital improvements to the harbour, though the changes that were eventually made were minor compared with the plans that were drawn up. This video looks at some of the changes in Eyemouth from before Black Friday to the present day. This map of Eyemouth was published in 1858 and is based on an 1856 survey. It shows the much smaller harbour that was in use at the time of the Black Friday disaster. The harbour was much smaller back then, with the middle pier extending out from around. Where Meek's Yard is now, there is an offset in the current quayside that may be related to this, and terminating in front of Gunn's greenhouse. Following the disaster, plans were quickly drawn up for significant improvements to the harbour by Thomas Meek and Son in 1882. These included extending the existing harbour up to the Smiddy Brae area. The creation of a new, deeper harbour with quays at the seafront sheltered by new east and west piers was also planned. The roadstead would also be enclosed with the creation of breakwater piers from the Fort Point to Herker and from Guns Green Point eastwards, with entry through the east yet. Sadly, and somewhat ironically, the events of the 14th of October 1881 left Eyemouth's fishing fleet decimated to the extent that it was decided the funds required to fulfill the plans would not be a worthwhile investment. Instead, some limited funding was made available, and the larger harbour that you can see here was created. No changes to the harbour entrance and no breakwater piers to create much needed shelter from the prevailing seas. It was the early 1960s before improvements were made to the harbour. Following plans by Leach and Sharp, civil engineers of Glasgow, tarmac construction carried out the work required. The entrance was changed by cutting through the old Smeaton Pier, and new piers were extended out in a northerly direction to create the new entrance, locally known as the Canyon. The old entrance was closed off, and large rocks were placed within the harbour at that area to dissipate incoming waves. A few years later, the East Pier at the harbour entrance was extended to provide a better breakwater for boats entering the harbour. The middle pier was cut back to the knuckle end, and the quayside along Harbour Road was made wider, creating a working quay for fish landings, etc. This reduced the width of the harbour. These works were completed in 1964. Around 100 years or so after Black Friday, and with the size of the fishing fleet such that, when the boats were all in the harbour, you could almost cross from one side of the harbour to the other by stepping over the boats. Further ambitious plans were drawn up for a phased development of Eyemouth Harbour to create a much bigger, deep water port. Phase 1 was the creation of a main breakwater pier from the Nest Ends Gully, out to and beyond Herker, and another pier from below Fort Point to Lough Hard Rock. Phase 2 was the creation of a 200-metre lead-in breakwater and a 100-metre long quay. The shaded area behind the quay would be levelled off. Phase 3 would see the building of a roll-on roll-off ferry terminal, the provision of a bridge and access road from the knuckle end, and a deepened channel would be created. Phase 4 was the creation of a new fishing harbour and all-round quayside with a 130-metre pier extending from Dulce Craig. Phase 5 would be the provision of a 240 meters extension to the lead-in breakwater. Sadly, the decline of the fishing industry in recent years has resulted in none of these plans coming to fruition, and what we have now is what you can see on the following image. Gons Green Basin, the fish market, ice plant and access road were added around 1999-2000, but were built too late to reach their full potential. The town has grown considerably over the years, but what might have been if any of the past plans had come to fruition? The harbour in the 1800s before Black Friday. The harbour with the post-Black Friday improvements. The harbour nowadays. The end of the middle pier prior to it being cut back. The shorter middle pier now. The harbour in the 1800s from upriver. The harbour as it is from upriver now. Early 60s improvement work at top end of harbour near FMA. Top end of the harbour now. Early 60s improvement work toward harbour entrance. Today's harbour entrance. Gons Green Basin works underway. Present Gons Green Basin entrance. Aerial view of Gons Green Basin works underway. Gons Green Basin completed. Gons Green House and Nisbet's Tower. Gons Green House, Nisbet's Tower and RNLI Eyemouth Lifeboat Station. Established in 1876, the station currently operates a Shannon-class all-weather lifeboat, Helen Hastings and D-class inshore lifeboat, Sheila. Helen Hastings and Sheila can be seen in training on Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings. Watch out for the feathered spectators too, though. Still a busy fishing harbour in the 1980s. A different mix of boats now with fewer fishing boats, but more leisure craft along with service vessels for the offshore NNG wind farm. Adventure playground back in the day. Many skinned knees and accidental wet clothes from here. Not a playground now, but a busy Gons Green Basin. RNLI Eyemouth's lifeboat moorings along with floating pontoons for service vessels, etc. Eyemouth Herring Queen crowning ceremony at Gons Green, known locally as Our the Witter. There's no space at Gons Green now, so the Eyemouth Herring Queen crowning ceremony is held at the seafront car park. The view from the old toll bridge showing the Bone Mill on the right and Eyemouth Railway Station on the left. This is the only way that you can get a view from the new toll bridge, as the trees along the riverbank have grown and now obscure the view downstream. Note, this video clip has been speeded up. The cars aren't really going that fast. You can see from this height that the Bone Mill and Railway Station are long gone. Back in 1894, there were plans to extend the railway line down to the harbour and along the middle pier. This map shows the railway line branching off at Bournemouth and turning to run close to the River Eye, crossing it at the viaduct and running under the old toll bridge to the station. The main part of the line terminates at the platform, and the section nearest to the riverside continues along to Harbour Road, known as Salt Green's Quay back then, and runs along the middle pier. Unfortunately, this was another plan for Eyemouth that came to naught. The old toll bridge and prefabs. The new toll bridge, Bus Craig, houses that superseded the prefabs, and Guns Green cottages. Old toll bridge from Guns Green side. New toll bridge from Guns Green side. Harbour side from the middle pier towards Glesgate Terrace. Same area now minus Glesgate Terrace, plus the harbour end of Manse Road. Manse Road under construction. Glesgate Terrace and Jack Marshall's yard would soon be demolished. Manse Road now, with D.R. Collins' yard to the left, Jacoparzi's and Oblo in the centre, with Salt Green's care home behind it, and the ship to the right. Established in 1898, Jacoparzi's is probably the oldest business in Eyemouth and is still owned and run by the same family. Starting with what was originally known as the Jukebox Cafe, the business has expanded and now includes Oblo, the bar and restaurant to the left facing onto Manse Road, and the new gelato parlour at the front facing the harbour side. Jacoparzi's state-of-the-art gelato factory, located at the Guns Green Trading Estate, also supplies shops and cafes far and near. Marketplace. Marketplace today, with the statue of Woolly Spears in attendance. Church Street. Church Street now. The old Bank Bird Chambers building on the right, looking a bit dilapidated. The Old Kirk, complete with posters for the Town Hall dance. Built in 1812, this was Eyemouth's original Church of Scotland church. The Old Kirk was converted in 1981 and is now Eyemouth Museum and Visitor Information Centre. The Old Kirk Manse. Manse Road toward the harbour. The High Street from Marketplace. The High Street from Marketplace now. Loff Brothers, baker and confectioners, founded in 1947 by Willie John and Peter Loff. Peter later married Ivy Jacoparzi, the sister of Zena. Lawrence and Summers emigrated to America with their sons Stuart and William and set up business in Los Angeles, California. Their grandchildren still live in California with their families. Willie John and his wife Janet stayed in Eyemouth and ran what is now Loff's Home Bakery. Their son Jim, Wimps, continued the business with his wife Anne. Willie John and Janet's grandson Richard with his wife Hilda now run the business with their family, Richard, not in the photo, Claire and Reese. Willie John and his great-grandson Reese at work in the bakery. As well as supplying their own shop, Loft supplies several retail outlets in the Scottish borders and Northumberland, and have opened an additional bakery facility to keep up with demand. The beach from the path to the caravan site. The beach from the path to the caravan site now. The Smiddy Bray from the avenue. Named as such due to there being a blacksmith's workshop located there. The Smiddy Bray area from above the avenue. The Smiddy is long gone and the Bray realigned. Towards the Whale Hotel from Guns Green. Towards the Whale from Guns Green, but where's the missing building? Legend has it that it collapsed into a subterranean cavity caused by smuggling activity, and the site was just levelled off. Maybe a bit far-fetched, but who knows? Seafront houses exposed to the rough seas. Following soon after Black Friday, the original seawall was built by workmen from the fishing port of Bantry, County Cork in Ireland. They had been moved to help by the overwhelming loss of life that hit the town and fishing fleet of Eyemouth. The seawall was named the Bantry to honor their commitment. The seawall that you see now was built by Tarmac Construction in the early 1960s, but the name the Bantry endures. The cobble house exposed to the sea. The cobble house, safer tucked behind the Bantry now. The beach from the Wellbraes End. The beach from the Wellbraes End now. Not so busy in this photo, but it does get busy in the summer. Before the current Bantry was built. The Bantry shortly after completion and before the harbour improvements in the early 1960s. The Bantry now with the entrance to Guns Green Basin in the foreground. Aerial view pre-Herker Crescent, Beach Avenue, Barefoots, etc. Aerial view of the same area now. Aerial view prior to the 1960s harbour development. Aerial view covering the same area now. Aerial view with the railway station and the bone mill prior to any development at Guns Green. Aerial view with no railway station or bone mill, but housing on the Guns Green side of the river now. Aerial view from the east around the late 1950s or very early 1960s, before the development of the harbour. The extension of Queen's Road and the building of John's Road on the Guns Green side. Aerial view of the same area now. We've looked back to the mid-1800s and we've seen various images from between then and now, but what next? Will the heliport at Guns Green Point that the Harbour Trust has planning permission for ever be built? Will the town expand to utilise the rest of the Asadale site? Will the area earmarked for housing development at Guns Green ever be built on? Will there be a resurgence in the fishing industry from the reallocation of quotas to justify further harbour development, or will the drive for marine conservation kill it off once and for all? Will the new offshore wind farm, operations and maintenance building, herald the start of a new type of future for the town as the need to increase investment in sustainable energy arises? The future of the fishing industry and the development of offshore wind farms do not need to be mutually incompatible, however. Eyemouth Harbour Trust has set out a strategic framework for the long-term development of the harbour that would position Eyemouth to be able to respond to growing opportunities in offshore wind, cargo, cruise and marine services, while continuing to support marine leisure and the fishing industry. Eyemouth Harbour Trust's master plan would develop the area to the east side of the harbour and roadstead to create a new deep water outer harbour with improved access and safety in adverse weather conditions and sea states. There would be 700 metres of berthing with capacity for larger vessels with up to 10 metres water depth below chart datum and space to accommodate large vessels, including SOVs, cruise vessels, cargo ships, fishing boats and super yachts in addition to marine services. Over 2 hectares of flexible, heavy lift quayside laydown and operational space would be available. This diagram shows the initial conceptual design of the outer harbour. This is illustrative only, as the final design will only be determined following initial technical studies including bathymetric survey, initial wave and sedimentation study, then scheme reconfirmation. This will be followed up with technical feasibility studies such as detailed wave and sedimentation study, environmental scoping, technical methods and costs reappraisal. The final design of the harbour development will only be arrived at following several option testing steps. This starts with the initial conceptual design being subjected to spatial considerations. Safe entry and exit must be provided along with adequate space and depth of water for safe maneuvering and berthing capacity for the size and volumes of vessels anticipated. Wave modelling is the next step. The harbour must provide shelter from all sea states so that quayside berthing is safe and any vessels moored there are not subjected to excessive wave motion. Failure to meet this criteria will result in the proposed layout going back to the design stage for review. If the wave modelling stage is successful, the next step is sedimentation modelling. This looks at what happens to any material that may end up at seabed level, such as sand and stones on the beach, eroded material from the rocks and cliffs around the bay, and any material that may be carried down the River Eye. It is essential that any impact from the harbour development is positive in terms of beach protection and enhancement, coastal erosion and flood protection. Once a suitable design is agreed on, more work is required to finalise the design and determine the costs involved in material procurement and construction to arrive at a suitable capital budget proposal for funding purposes. All of this will be subject to an overarching environmental impact assessment and will require statutory approvals, including environmental, harbour revision order and planning, etc. There are a lot of issues that need to be addressed, but hopefully the future looks bright for the harbour, the town and the people of Eyemouth. Enjoy your visit and come back soon to learn how things develop.